The champagne glasses sparkled under the enormous crystal chandeliers of the Riverside Manor's grand terrace. Omar Khalil, a 47-year-old petroleum magnate from Syria, stood at the center of attention, his arm wrapped possessively around his fiancée, Valentina Moretti, a stunning 29-year-old Italian fashion model whose photographs graced the covers of international magazines. The engagement celebration had drawn over 350 guests, business moguls, politicians, celebrities, and members of New York's elite social circles. The manor's expansive gardens, maintained to absolute perfection, served as the backdrop for what was supposed to be the event of the season. But perfection, as everyone would soon discover, is often just an illusion waiting to shatter. Maya Bennett had been working as the head gardener at Riverside Manor for nearly 4 years. The 37-year-old African-American woman took pride in her work, carefully cultivating every rose bush, precisely trimming every hedge, and ensuring that the estate's botanical displays remained the envy of Manhattan's upper class. She worked mostly in silence, arriving before dawn and often leaving after sunset, invisible to the wealthy residents who enjoyed the fruits of her labor without ever acknowledging her presence. That evening, Maya had been asked to stay late to make some last-minute adjustments to the floral arrangements on the terrace. She moved quietly among the guests, adjusting rose displays and ensuring the climbing jasmine remained perfectly positioned along the marble columns. She had learned long ago to make herself invisible at events like these, to move through spaces without drawing attention, to exist without disturbing the carefully constructed world of privilege that surrounded her. But invisibility, Maya would soon learn, can only last so long. The catastrophe happened in an instant. As Maya reached up to adjust a particularly stubborn orchid arrangement suspended above the main refreshment table, her ladder shifted on the polished stone. She grabbed for balance, her hand catching the edge of a decorative fabric drape. The entire display came crashing down. Orchids, roses, crystal vases, and an elaborate ice sculpture in the shape of 2 intertwined swans. The noise was thunderous. Ice shattered across the marble terrace. Water flooded the pristine white tablecloth. Flower petals scattered like confetti across the expensive Italian tiles. And in the center of it all stood Maya, her work uniform soaked, her hands still gripping the torn fabric, surrounded by the ruins of what had been a $10,000 centerpiece. The music stopped. Every conversation ceased. 350 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Omar Khalil's face turned a deep shade of crimson. He had been in the middle of a toast, his champagne glass raised high, when the crash interrupted him. Now he stood frozen, his mouth open in mid-sentence, staring at the disaster before him. "You absolute fool!" Omar's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He strode toward Maya, his expensive Italian shoes crunching over shattered ice. "Do you have any concept of how much that cost? That ice sculpture alone was worth more than you make in 6 months." Maya stood paralyzed, her face burning with humiliation as she felt the weight of hundreds of judgmental stares. She opened her mouth to apologize, but no words came out. Valentina Moretti glided forward, her designer gown sweeping dramatically across the terrace. Her red lips curved into a cruel smile as she surveyed the damage. "Omar, darling, this is precisely why certain people should never be allowed at events like this. She clearly doesn't belong in civilized company." "You're absolutely right, my love," Omar replied, his voice dripping with contempt. The Syrian-American businessman had consumed several glasses of expensive scotch throughout the evening, and the alcohol had amplified his natural arrogance to toxic levels. His petroleum import business had just secured a massive contract with 3 Gulf nations. His fiancée was the envy of every man present, and he felt utterly invincible. Seeing this black woman groveling among the wreckage only inflated his already considerable ego further. "You're fired," Omar announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Security will escort you out immediately. And you can be certain I'll be contacting the employment agency to ensure you never work at a respectable establishment again." Maya finally found her voice. "Sir, I'm deeply sorry. It was an accident. Please, I need this job. An accident? Omar laughed coldly. People like you are accidents. You think you can simply waltz into our world and pretend you belong? You're a gardener. You work with dirt. You have no place among people of culture and refinement. That's when Omar noticed the music still playing softly in the background. The DJ had queued up a sultry Argentine tango, the music drifting across the terrace like a whisper. An idea formed in his alcohol-soaked mind, and a wicked smile spread across his face. Tell me something, Omar said, his voice taking on a theatrical quality that drew even more attention. Can you dance? Maya looked at him, confused and humiliated. I don't understand what that has to do with. It's a simple question, Omar interrupted, spreading his arms wide in an exaggerated gesture. Can you dance? I don't see how that's relevant, sir. Omar turned to address his guests, playing to the crowd like a performer. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a proposition that I think you'll find entertaining. He paused for dramatic effect. If this woman, this gardener who can't even arrange flowers without destroying everything, if she can dance the tango better than my beautiful, talented fiancée, I will cancel my engagement and marry her instead. The terrace erupted in laughter. The suggestion was so absurd, so ridiculous, that several guests actually applauded Omar's audacity. The idea of a wealthy Arab petroleum magnate marrying a black gardener seemed like the punchline to an elaborate joke. Valentina laughed the loudest, throwing her head back dramatically. Omar, you're being absolutely outrageous. This poor woman probably can't even walk in a straight line, let alone perform something as sophisticated as tango. But Maya wasn't laughing. She stood completely still, her eyes fixed on Omar with an intensity that made several nearby guests uncomfortable. There was something in her expression, not fear, not shame, but something else entirely. Something calculating, something patient, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. I accept, Maya said quietly. The laughter died immediately. Omar blinked several times, certain he had misheard. What did you say? I accept your challenge, Maya repeated, her voice now steady and clear. But I want witnesses. Everyone here heard your offer. If I dance better than her, you keep your word. Valentina's laughter returned, sharp and mocking. A condition? Who exactly do you think you are to be making conditions? You're a gardener who just destroyed a $10,000 display. Maya ignored Valentina completely, keeping her gaze locked on Omar. Well, do you have the courage to honor your word? Or are you the kind of man who makes promises he never intends to keep? The challenge hung in the air. Omar felt the eyes of his guests on him. Powerful people, influential people, people whose respect he valued. He couldn't back down now without appearing weak or cowardly in front of the very circles he had spent years trying to impress. Fine, Omar said, smiling confidently. But when you humiliate yourself out there, I want it to be perfectly clear that you brought this on yourself. You'll leave here tonight with nothing. No job, no dignity, no future. What Omar couldn't possibly know was that the seemingly humble gardener standing before him carried secrets that would tear his entire world apart. Behind Maya's quiet demeanor and calloused hands lay a history that would transform this moment of mockery into the most expensive mistake of Omar Khalil's life. The guests murmured among themselves, pulling out their phones to record what they assumed would be an amusing spectacle. The DJ, confused but following orders, queued up La Comparsita, one of the most famous tangos ever composed. Maya walked to the center of the terrace, her work boots tracking water from the destroyed ice sculpture. She stood in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by shattered crystal and scattered flower petals, looking utterly out of place in her mud-stained uniform. Valentina went first. She moved onto the dance floor with practiced confidence, her designer gown flowing elegantly as she began to move. She had studied dance during her modeling career, basic choreography for music videos and fashion shows. Her movements were technically correct, sensual, and attention-grabbing. She performed several turns, struck dramatic poses, and received enthusiastic applause from the male guests who appreciated her physical display more than her actual dancing ability. When Valentina finished, She returned to Omar's side with a triumphant smile, certain that she had already won. Then it was Maya's turn. She stood completely still for several long seconds, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and measured. The guests watched with a mixture of anticipation and barely concealed mockery, expecting an embarrassing display they could gossip about for weeks. When the music began again, something extraordinary happened. Maya's transformation was immediate and complete. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for someone wearing work boots and a gardener's uniform. Her body responded to every note, every rhythm, every subtle shift in the music, as if the tango itself was speaking through her movements. Her legs executed intricate steps with perfect precision. Ochos, ganchos, boleos, technical elements that only trained dancers would recognize. Her arms moved with an expressive elegance that told a story without words, each gesture deliberate and emotionally charged. Her posture was impeccable, her balance flawless, her musicality so refined that she seemed to anticipate each musical phrase before it arrived. But it wasn't just technical skill that captivated the audience. Maya danced with a raw, emotional intensity that transformed the performance into something profound. Every movement carried weight, history, pain, passion, resilience. She wasn't simply executing choreography. She was bearing her soul through dance, sharing a narrative of struggle and survival that resonated deep in the hearts of those watching. The terrace fell absolutely silent except for the music. Guests who had been recording on their phones lowered them slowly, too mesmerized to remember they were supposed to be documenting this for social media. Several women had tears in their eyes. Even a waitstaff stopped working to watch. Maya performed a series of advanced movements that would challenge professional dancers. Leg wraps, off-axis turns, dynamic lifts and dips that she executed without a partner, her invisible connection to the music so strong that she didn't need another person to complete the dance. She moved across the terrace like water, like wind, like something elemental and unstoppable. When she finished, freezing in a final dramatic pose, the silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then someone began to clap. Then another. Within seconds, the entire terrace had erupted into thunderous applause. Guests rose to their feet, shouting "Brava!" and wiping tears from their eyes. Several people were already posting videos to social media with captions like "Most incredible tango I've ever witnessed." Valentina stood frozen, her face pale with shock and humiliation. Omar remained motionless, his mouth slightly open, unable to process what he had just witnessed. That's impossible," Omar stammered. "You're just a gardener. Where did you learn to dance like that?" At that precise moment, Maya's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and the smallest smile crossed her face before she answered. "Yes, Mr. Rodriguez," she said calmly, stepping slightly away from the crowd. "Did you manage to get the documentation we requested?" Omar tried to eavesdrop, but he couldn't make out the words. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. When Maya ended the call and turned back to face him, her entire demeanor had changed. The submissive gardener was gone, replaced by someone who carried herself with quiet authority. "Where did I learn to dance?" Maya repeated, her voice now strong and clear. "I learned at the Academia de Tango Fernandez in Buenos Aires. I studied there for 6 years before becoming their youngest ever lead instructor. I was 24 years old when they appointed me to that position." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Omar's frown deepened with confusion and growing unease. "That's a lie," Valentina interjected, her voice sharp. "If you're some kind of professional dancer, why are you working as a gardener?" "An excellent question," Maya replied, reaching into her uniform pocket. She pulled out a faded, yellowed business card and held it up for everyone to see. "Because 8 years ago, my entire career was destroyed by false accusations of theft at a luxury resort in Miami. I lost everything. My reputation, my position, my livelihood, all because a wealthy businessman decided his son's crimes needed a convenient scapegoat." Omar felt ice forming in his stomach. There was something disturbingly familiar about this story. "The resort was called Paradise Shores," Maya continued, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the guests. "And the man who orchestrated my downfall. The man who bribed security to plant stolen property in my locker, who paid off the local police to ensure I couldn't fight back, who systematically destroyed my professional reputation to protect his drug-addicted son. That man was a partner in a petroleum import business." Omar's face drained of color completely. Paradise Shores. He remembered that name. He remembered that situation. He remembered making certain decisions to protect his family's interests. "You're making this up," Omar said, but his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "This is some kind of con. You're trying to extort money from me." "Am I?" Maya's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. "Then perhaps you don't remember the black dance instructor who taught your son, Kareem, how to perform choreography for his university theater production in 2016. The same instructor who was accused of stealing jewelry and electronics from several resort guests when, in reality, it was your precious son stealing them to sell for drug money." The silence on the terrace was now suffocating. Omar's hands trembled visibly. Several guests had their phones out, recording everything. This was no longer entertainment. This was turning into something much more serious. I don't know what you're talking about," Omar managed to say, but everyone could see he was lying. "You don't remember?" Maya laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "How strange, because I have a very detailed recording of the phone conversation between you and the resort's head of security, Marcus Webb, where you explicitly agreed to frame me for your son's crimes. Would you like to hear it?" Omar's world tilted on its axis. He suddenly understood that he wasn't dealing with a simple gardener who had stumbled into his engagement party. He was dealing with someone who had planned this encounter with meticulous precision. Someone who had waited 8 long years for exactly the right moment to strike back. "You're bluffing." Omar tried one more time, but his voice cracked with desperation. Maya reached in her other pocket and pulled out a small digital recording device. "Want to test that theory?" She pressed the play button, and Omar's unmistakable voice, slightly younger but definitely his, echoed across the terrace through a small portable speaker she had connected. "Marcus, listen carefully. My son made some mistakes, yes, but I cannot allow this to damage our family's standing in the business community. The dance teacher, she's young, black, not from a prominent family. No one will question it if the evidence points to her. Plant the jewelry and electronics in her locker. Make sure the police report is filed before she has a chance to mount any defense. I'll wire $50,000 to your Cayman Islands account by end of business tomorrow." The reaction from the guests was immediate and visceral. Several people gasped audibly. Others began whispering urgently to one another. Valentina's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Multiple phones were now recording, the video already being uploaded to social media platforms where they would be viewed millions of times within hours. This is fabricated," Omar shouted desperately, sweat pouring down his forehead despite the cool evening air. "Digital technology can fake anything. This is a deep fake." "Perhaps," Maya agreed calmly. "But what about these?" She pulled a USB flash drive from her pocket, holding it up for everyone to see. "Bank transfer records. Email correspondence between you and Marcus Webb spanning 3 months. Text messages discussing the timeline and logistics. Security camera footage from the resort showing you meeting with Webb in the parking garage. 8 years of evidence that I have painstakingly collected and verified. And there's more," said a deep, authoritative voice from the entrance to the terrace. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. A distinguished black man in his early 60s, wearing an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, walked onto the terrace accompanied by 2 individuals in dark suits with FBI badges clearly visible on their belts. "Who the hell are you?" Omar demanded, though his voice had lost all its earlier bluster. "Alexander Rodriguez," the man replied calmly. "I'm Ms. Bennett's attorney, and a former federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime, specifically money laundering and tax evasion. It's interesting how investigations into one crime often uncover so many others, don't you think?" Omar staggered backward, nearly tripping over a piece of the shattered ice sculpture. "My attorney? I need to call my attorney." "You'll have that opportunity shortly," Mr. Rodriguez said. "But first, I think it's important that everyone here understands the full scope of what's been happening. You see, after you destroyed Ms. Bennett's career 8 years ago, she found herself in a difficult position. Her professional reputation had been demolished. Her savings were depleted from legal fees trying to fight false charges. She needed work, any work to survive. Mr. Rodriguez paused, letting his words sink in. So she took a job doing something she actually enjoyed, working with plants, with soil, with growing things. And through a remarkable stroke of fortune, or perhaps fate, she found employment at this very estate. An estate that you, Mr. Khalil, had recently purchased as one of your many investment properties. An estate where you frequently held private business meetings. Omar's face went from pale to gray. No, that's not. Oh, but it is, Maya interjected quietly. For the past 4 years, I've been here, Mr. Khalil. Invisible. Just a gardener, trimming your hedges, planting your flowers, maintaining your grounds. Present but unnoticed during your private meetings on the terrace where you thought you had complete privacy. You have no idea how much wealthy people discuss when they assume the help isn't paying attention. Mr. Rodriguez continued. Over those 4 years, Ms. Bennett documented an extraordinary catalog of illegal activities. Tax evasion schemes involving shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Money laundering through fictitious petroleum shipment contracts. Bribery of government officials to secure import licenses. Wire fraud. Securities fraud. The list is quite extensive. This is persecution. Omar shouted, his voice rising to a near hysterical pitch. You can't prove any of this. This is a conspiracy to destroy my reputation. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez, one of the FBI agents, stepped forward with her badge clearly visible. Actually, Mr. Khalil, we can prove it. Every word of it. Your financial accounts were frozen approximately 3 hours ago based on evidence provided by Ms. Bennett and verified by our forensic accounting team. We have arrest warrants and search warrants for both your residential and business properties. My accounts. Omar's knees buckled slightly. You can't. That's impossible. Is it, though? Maya asked softly. Do you remember the gardener who was present during your conference call with the Bahraini oil minister last month? The one where you discussed kickback arrangements? Or the gardener who was replanting roses outside your office window when you and your accountant reviewed those falsified tax documents? Or the gardener who conveniently needed to adjust the irrigation system near the terrace during your meeting with Senator Richardson, where you offered him campaign contributions in exchange for favorable committee votes? Omar looked at Maya, as if seeing her for the first time, true horror dawning in his eyes. You've been spying on me for 4 years. Not spying, Mr. Rodriguez corrected. Gathering evidence. There's a difference. Ms. Bennett never broke any laws. She simply paid attention, remembered what she heard, photographed documents that were carelessly left on outdoor tables, and, with my guidance, ensured that everything was documented in a manner that would be admissible in court. And there's something else you should know, Special Agent Martinez added. Remember Paradise Shores Resort in Miami? The FBI has reopened the investigation into that property. It turns out it wasn't just your son selling drugs to guests. The entire resort was being used as a distribution hub for a regional drug trafficking operation. Your son Kareem wasn't just an addict. He was a mid-level dealer. And you, Mr. Khalil, were aware of this and actively helped cover it up. Valentina Moretti, who had been standing frozen in shock, suddenly exploded into action. She ripped the enormous diamond engagement ring from her finger and threw it onto the terrace floor, where it bounced once and rolled to a stop near Maya's boot. You're a monster, Valentina said, her voice shaking with genuine fury. You told me you were a respectable businessman, a man of integrity. I'm not marrying a criminal. I'm not attaching my name and my reputation to whatever this is. Valentina, please wait. Omar reached for her desperately. Don't touch me. She jerked away from him violently. You're disgusting. Framing an innocent woman? Protecting a drug dealer? Bribing government officials? I want nothing to do with you. She turned to Maya, and for a moment, their eyes met. I'm sorry, Valentina said quietly, for what I said earlier. for how I treated you. You have more class in your little finger than I've ever had." With that, Valentina swept off the terrace, her designer gown flowing behind her, leaving Omar standing alone and exposed before 350 witnesses and at least 100 phone cameras. "There's no explanation for what you did to me," Maya said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You destroyed my career. You destroyed my reputation. You forced me to abandon everything I'd worked for, all to protect your criminal son from the consequences of his own actions." Omar turned to her desperately. "Maya, please. We can work this out. I have money. I can compensate you. Name your price." "With what money?" Maya laughed bitterly. "Your accounts are frozen. Your assets will be seized. Your business is under federal investigation. And you know what's the most beautiful part? This entire scene, everything that just happened here, is being recorded by dozens of people. It'll be trending on social media within the hour. By tomorrow morning, every major news outlet will be running this story." As if summoned by her words, a group of journalists pushed their way onto the terrace, cameras and microphones at the ready. Mr. Rodriguez had clearly alerted the media in advance. "Mr. Khalil," shouted a reporter from the New York Times, "is it true that you've been arrested for money laundering and tax evasion?" "Mr. Khalil," another reporter, this one from CNN, "can you comment on the allegations that you framed an innocent woman for crimes committed by your son?" "No comment." Omar tried to hide behind a marble pillar. "I have nothing to say. I need to speak with my attorney." "Mr. Khalil," a third reporter, freelance, but with a massive online following, "why did you challenge a gardener to a dance competition at your engagement party?" Camera flashes illuminated Omar's sweating, panicked face. The man who had stood so confidently just 30 minutes earlier, mocking a woman he considered beneath him, now looked utterly destroyed, his entire world collapsing in real time while hundreds watched. Special Agent Martinez approached with handcuffs. "Omar Khalil, you're under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion, bribery of public officials, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. You have the right to remain silent." As the agent read Omar his Miranda rights, he looked at Maya one final time. "Why?" he asked, his voice broken. "Why did you wait so long? Why go through all of this?" Maya's expression remained cold, impassive. "Because I needed to be certain. I needed evidence that would stick. I needed to ensure that when you finally fell, it would be complete and permanent. I couldn't risk you finding a way to wriggle free like you did 8 years ago. And," she added quietly, "because I wanted you to feel what it's like to be humiliated in front of people who matter to you. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to have everything you've built crumble in a single moment. I wanted you to experience the exact type of public destruction that you inflicted on me." As Omar was handcuffed and led away by the FBI agents, journalists surrounding him with cameras and shouted questions, Maya remained standing in the center of the dance floor, surrounded by the wreckage of the engagement party and the ruins of Omar Khalil's empire. For the first time in 8 years, she felt truly free. 6 months later, Maya Washington stood in the wings of Lincoln Center, adjusting the flowing costume she wore for her performance. In just minutes, she would walk onto one of the world's most prestigious stages as a guest performer with the American Ballet Theater, showcasing a contemporary tango fusion piece that blended traditional Argentine tango with modern dance elements. The story of what had happened at Omar Khalil's engagement party had spread like wildfire across social media and traditional news outlets. Gardner's revenge, how one woman brought down a corrupt millionaire, had been the headline in the New York Times. From dirt to dance floor, the Maya Bennett story read the Washington Post feature. News programs had covered it extensively, and the video of her tango performance had been viewed over 50 million times across various platforms. In the aftermath, opportunities had flooded in. Dance companies, choreographers, theatrical producers. Everyone wanted to work with the gardener who danced like a goddess and took down a criminal. But Maya had been selective, careful to choose projects that aligned with her values and her vision for the future. Mr. Rodriguez appeared at her dressing room door, a broad smile on his face. "Ready for your big moment?" Maya nodded, her hands steady as she finished securing her hair. "I've been ready for this for 8 years." The appeals process concluded yesterday, Mr. Rodriguez said, his tone becoming more serious. Omar's final appeal was denied. The sentence stands 28 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Maya absorbed this information quietly. And Kareem, 14 years for drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. He'll be eligible for parole in 8 years if he demonstrates genuine rehabilitation. The family's petroleum business? Completely dismantled. The legitimate portions were sold off to pay federal fines and restitution to victims. The rest was seized as proceeds from criminal activity. The Khalil family's financial empire no longer exists. Maya was silent for a moment. And Valentina, Mr. Rodriguez chuckled. She gave an interview to Vogue last month. She said, and I'm quoting here, "Being publicly humiliated at my own engagement party was the best thing that ever happened to me. Maya Bennett saved me from making the worst decision of my life. I'll be forever grateful to her." Ironic, Maya said softly, considering what she called me that night. People's perspectives change dramatically when they realize who truly has character and dignity, Mr. Rodriguez observed. Speaking of which, this arrived for you today. He handed her an elegant envelope with an Argentine postmark. Maya opened it carefully, and her eyes welled with tears as she read. "It's from the Academia de Tango Fernandez," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "They're offering me a position as their principal artistic director and master instructor. They say they never should have doubted me, and they want to make amends for not supporting me 8 years ago when I needed them most. Will you accept?" Maya looked out the small window of her dressing room at the lights of New York City, the city that had witnessed her humiliation and her ultimate triumph. "I'm considering it, but I've also received an offer to open my own dance academy here in Manhattan. A school specifically focused on providing full scholarships to young people from underserved communities, especially young black and brown kids who have the talent, but not the financial resources." Mr. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. "Using your experience to help others who face similar barriers and injustices." Exactly. I want to teach more than just dance technique. I want to teach resilience, strategy, patience. I want to show these young people that no matter how powerful the forces arrayed against them, if they're smart, determined, and patient, justice can prevail. There was a knock at the door, the stage manager alerting her that it was time. As Maya walked toward the stage, Mr. Rodriguez called after her. "Maya, can I ask you something personal?" She paused and turned back. "Of course. During those 8 years, working as a gardener, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment, did you ever feel hatred toward Omar?" Maya considered the question carefully. "At first, absolutely. Consuming, burning hatred that kept me awake at night. But over time, I realized that hatred was poisoning me from the inside. So I transformed it. I turned that hatred into determination, into strategy, into purpose. I used it as fuel instead of letting it become my prison. And now, after seeing him arrested and convicted, now I feel something closer to pity. He had every advantage: wealth, education, opportunities, privilege. And he chose to use all of it to hurt innocent people and protect criminals. In the end, he didn't just destroy his own life. He destroyed his son's life too. Kareem might have gotten help if Omar had let him face consequences years ago. Instead, Omar enabled his addiction and criminal behavior until it ruined both their lives. The stage manager gestured more urgently. It was truly time. Maya took a deep breath and walked toward the stage entrance. As she did, Mr. Rodriguez called out one more time. "You know what the most powerful part of this whole story is?" She looked back. "What's that?" "You didn't become like him. You had every justification to be cruel, vindictive, to ruin his life the way he ruined yours. But you didn't. You simply revealed the truth. You let his own actions destroy him. That takes more strength than revenge ever could." Maya smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her entire face. "That's because I learned something important, Mr. Rodriguez. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so genuinely happy that what they did to you becomes irrelevant." They tried to write my ending. Instead, I wrote my own. The music swelled. The stage lights came up. Maya walked into the spotlight to thunderous applause, ready to show the world that a gardener who had been mocked and humiliated had emerged as a triumph of resilience, strategy, and unbreakable spirit. 3 months later, the Washington Bennett Academy of Dance opened its doors on a sunny September morning in a converted warehouse space in Brooklyn. 80 young people from disadvantaged neighborhoods had been accepted into the full scholarship program for the inaugural year. Maya had hired a diverse staff of talented instructors, many of whom had their own stories of overcoming obstacles and discrimination in the arts world. During the opening ceremony, a reporter from NPR asked, "Ms. Bennett, what advice would you give to people who have faced similar injustices in their lives?" Maya thought carefully before responding, aware that her words would be heard by thousands of people facing their own struggles. Don't let bitterness consume you. That's what they want. They want you to become bitter and broken. Instead, use your pain as fuel to become stronger, smarter, better. Document everything. Be patient. Build your case methodically. And most importantly, never let them steal your joy or your purpose. Another reporter asked, "If you could speak to Omar Khalil today, what would you say to him?" Maya paused, considering the question seriously. "I would say thank you, because in trying to break me, you forced me to discover strengths I never knew I possessed. You thought you were destroying my future. Instead, you pushed me toward my true purpose. You took 8 years from me, but you gave me a lifetime of meaning. You tried to bury me, but you didn't realize you were planting a seed." As the cameras recorded her words, Maya looked at the young dancers behind her, Black kids, Latino kids, Asian kids, poor kids who had talent and dreams but had never had access to quality instruction. They were practicing basic steps, their faces intense with concentration and bright with joy. She had turned her greatest defeat into the sweetest possible victory. Omar Khalil had tried to erase Maya Bennett from the dance world. Instead, he had created someone even more powerful, a woman who understood that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, strategizing carefully, and building something so meaningful that the people who try to destroy you become footnotes in your success story. If you enjoyed this story of resilience, strategic patience, and ultimate justice, remember to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories that prove that truth, determination, and careful planning can overcome even the most powerful adversaries. In the end, character always defeats corruption, and those who wait for the right moment to strike back can achieve victories that seem impossible to those who act rashly.